HackerNoon podcast.
Artificial intelligence will be like a net negative for humanity. It definitely has like ridiculous amounts of positives, which is why I say net negative, not just purely negative. Like we are just machines that are absorbing information around us, recombining it in different ways, and then spitting it back out. I think there might be one difference here as compared to the previous revolutions, whether it was industrial or the computer revolution. How you talk to a computer, your prompts get more and more complex. So that becomes a more and more maybe valuable skill. See, if you're a single founder, you can't really do all of it, right? So you've got to, I think you've got to over-index on one of those things that kind of impacts the rest in some way.
This episode of the HackerNoon podcast is sponsored by Threads.com.
Threads is an all-in-one communication tool for modern teams. If you use Slack or Discord for work, you've felt the pain of constant interruptions and difficulty keeping up. Threads fixes that with threaded discussions, video narrations, chat messages, and an AI assistant named Taylor that will summarize any messages or threads you might have missed. Threads helps your team stay on top of what matters most. Visit threads.com and sign up today.
So hello and welcome to the HackerNoon podcast. Today I have Luis Pereira with us. He's a fellow Goan and he's built this amazing tool called AudioPen.ai. It converts all of the things that you say into a readable text, all using AI. This person is not a developer. He is an economist, and then he started playing around with no-code tools, and here we are. Check out his tool later if you want, but for now, I want to hand the floor over to Luis and tell us a little bit about himself, what his journey is like, and so on and so forth.
Thanks for having me. Like you said, I'm a non-technical guy. I've often struggled to learn how to code. So I think I tried that about 3 or 4 times in life, failed every single time. I think I just didn't have the patience to see it through, to kind of grasp the basics all the way to a finished product that could earn me money. I just wasn't patient enough. Fortunately for me, I bit the no-code bug somewhere around 2015, 16. But technology back then was still too early to be able to build something useful. So let it kind of sit for a few years and got back to it somewhere in 2021. The landscape of no-code tools had changed completely. And that's when I discovered that, I didn't have to keep trying to learn how to code because suddenly a lot of the ideas that I had, I could just build without learning how to code. I would never be able to build something on the absolute bleeding edge of technology. For that, I might still need code. But I do all of this as a part-time side hustle for fun outside of my day job. So I don't necessarily have to be living on the bleeding edge. I can just build small stuff that's interesting and hopefully useful to people. Ever since 2021, for the last 2 years, I've just been launching one product after the other online, most of which have failed and a couple of which have succeeded. And AudioPen is the latest one that's succeeded a lot, much more than I expected it to. But yeah, I'm working hard on it at the moment.
Gotcha. So that was pretty interesting. So Luis, tell me about how did a guy from Goa end up in a place like Delhi? What was your experience like? For those of us who don't live in India, might not get this reference, but for the people in America, it's moving from New York to somewhere in the rural suburbs, maybe Florida, could be a very good example. So what was your experience with North Indians in general?
I mean, it was interesting. So I went to Delhi just for college. I studied economics in college and I got into a good college there. So I moved. And for the first 3 years, it was a complete bubble, right? We lived on university campus in the north, very sheltered from the rest of the city. So it was a nice transition. Obviously, it wasn't all rosy because Delhi is a very different place from Goa. The people are different, the food is different, the weather is different. It was an interesting transition. After 3 years, I then moved to Gurgaon for about 5 years, which was the proper real world, hitting you in the face. That was interesting. I worked in the corporate world for a bit there. Then did a proper startup there as well. During the whole Startup India craze of 2015, 2016. Yeah, and then moved back home in 2018 to join the family business here. And I don't think I'm going to be moving out of Goa anytime soon.
Yeah, man, nobody wants to move out. People want to move in. And the pandemic really increased that pace. I myself moved in during the pandemic because why not? So On to like your journey from being an economist to building products. Like, what was that journey like? Like, what did you have to? I want to use the word learn, but I'm going to use the word unlearn. Like, what did you have to
And
unlearn to become an entrepreneur, to build products? And especially as a one-man thing.
yeah, I mean, I come from like a business sort of family here in Goa. So ever since I was a child, I mean, I've always seen people creating stuff, taking risks, starting businesses that succeed, sometimes don't. So I always knew that I was familiar with that space. It's not like I had to, I think going to college was a different experience. It was not that I had to learn something new. I sort of had to come back to what I already knew at some level. Having said that, economics was great. College was great. Met some of the smartest people I know over there. Graduated, worked in consulting, got got both the good and the bad. Like the good is you get a bunch of hard skills, you get some money, you meet smart people again. Bad is like you just see what is this? Like some of the work is just crap. Even like what you're pitching your clients is you're not really creating value, you're just pretending to create value so you can get a retainer project. But anyway, then made the transition back into the startup world in 2015, which was one of my co-founders was my batchmate in college. Yeah, we tried to create like a real estate startup in Gurgaon, and it was horrible. Basically, I did not like the friction of the real world at that point. I learned a few hard lessons that, especially starting up in India is very difficult. You've got a ton of regulations, just compliances, GST related stuff, different government departments want different things. Even in the real world, it's sometimes very like unorganized. So if you're creating a startup that's working in the world of atoms, it's hard work. Like a lot of stuff is unorganized. A lot of people are very set in their ways. They don't want to change. Margins are very low. People don't want to spend money that easily. And when that startup didn't do as well as we wanted it to, and I moved back home, I don't think it was a conscious decision to stay away from that kind of thing again. But I think subconsciously I kind of felt attracted towards more like frictionless forms of value creation, especially as like a one-man show. And like the obvious next step was to, mess around on the internet and see what I could build. Yeah, like I said earlier, I couldn't code. So my options were two things. I could either write, so, create media, because I could write fairly well, but that's the main form of media I could create, or build stuff without code. So I tried writing initially, did quite well, started a fairly successful blog, a couple of them actually, but learned the hard way there that when you're a writer on the internet, no matter how large your audience gets, the amount of work you have to put in stays the same. It never goes down, right? Like, so even if you're a successful writer, it's not that you can just relax for a bit, because people expect you to create stuff every week or every month or whatever. So learned that the hard way, moved away from that to the second option, which was let's try and build products. And then discovered Bubble, which is a no-code tool I use to build everything back in 2021. And I've just been addicted to it since, like one thing after the other, just building and launching as many things as I can.
Gotcha. And I'm very curious to know about your take on AI, because you don't suffer from the tunnel vision that we usually find with developers. They take a lot of things as a given, which people like not from the industry might not take as a given.
Could you give me an example of that, like what they take as a given? I'm curious. That sounds like a very interesting perspective that I currently don't have.
Okay. So let's take the example of a popular software that you use, right? Slack, Microsoft Teams, right? So it was on some tweet by a product management guy who I follow. So what happens when you press the up arrow on Slack? Like if you use Slack, it goes to the end of the sentence that you were writing, and then you could backspace and delete it. What happens on Microsoft Teams is that it starts off at the beginning of the sentence. So you need to scroll to the end, and then like you have to get back. So like stuff, it's an example from UI or UX, might not like really fit, but what I'm trying to allude to is that I, again, as a non-developer who tries to tinker with a lot of things, finds that the documentation might not be the best. like, hey, how do you call an API? You need to know about a lot of things before you can call an API. How do you deploy it on C++? Like all of these things. So a lot of these things get taken as a given by a lot of the people building them. And I put all of that into this umbrella that I use a lot for tunnel vision. Like they have it. So when somebody outside of the industry like is building stuff like you are in this thing, like which is the hottest thing right now, like building tools on AI. So I wanted to know what's your take on AI? What do you think is artificial intelligence as of 2023?
It's a broad question. I think artificial intelligence, and I'm talking at like a social level, not at like a technical level. I think artificial intelligence will be like a net negative for humanity. It definitely has like ridiculous amounts of positives, which is why I say net negative, not just purely negative. But I feel like the tail risk is not insignificant of something going wrong at some point. And even if the tail risk is, let's say we manage to avoid it for long enough, I think during that period of avoidance, we will end up creating more confused and dissatisfied humans in the world as a result of AI. And like take a couple of steps back there before I confuse people. It is
That was such a
I think
consultant answer, like pale.
no, it's not consult. I'll explain it.
Yeah.
Basically, I believe that like we've evolved in like a world of needs, right, and a world of survival. Like evolved to basically just know what we need. It's very limited. We want food, we want water, we want relationships, we want shelter, etc. However, post-industrialization, whatever, in the recent century or so, we've moved a majority of the world into a world of wants, into a post-needs world. And wants are never limited. Like, you want what I want what someone else wants. That can just keep going. And my current hypothesis is that a big source of dissatisfaction, depression, mental health issues, etc., in today's world are due to the fact that people want things that they can't get or they don't know how to get because they're exposed to things that other people are getting, although they share very different contexts from you. Right? So I see someone in America getting something, I want that, I can't get it because his context is very different. So I'm suddenly frustrated. What AI is going to do is accelerate that transition by basically making us as humans almost irrelevant, or it's going to make us lose these so-called status games of wants that we play, right? Like for instance, the simple status game would be, let's say, I'm playing a status game to become the best writer in my peer group, whoever that may be. Suddenly AI has turned up and it is a better writer than 99% of writers. So everyone else is using AI to pretend like they are the top 1%. Suddenly everyone is just losing the game. Nobody can say who's the winner because nobody knows who's really playing. So it just leads us to a world in which everyone is confused about what status game they're playing. Because status is so like inherently wired into us, right? We want status to be able to satisfy our needs. And in a world where we're playing status games in ever increasing sort of group sizes because of the internet, that just gets very, very confusing. The impact of AI is just going to accelerate that trend. So even if we don't end up kind of suffering from the tail risk of AI, which is, whatever, AI takes over the world and shuts down electrical systems for fun, we still lose ourselves in the process. Like it's not evident to me that technological progress is always good. Or let's not say always good, let's say is always a net positive. Like I think OpenAI and Sam Altman, like they've thought about it a lot, but I think they've made a few mistakes where, they kind of say that AI will result in us having to work less, having to pursue leisure. But there's never been a point in human history where technological change has resulted in us working less. We've always just worked more. Because suddenly the bar for gaining status has just gone higher. The game has just become more intense because we're all using the same tools. We're not using the tools to satisfy our needs. We're using those tools to satisfy our wants. So we just end up working harder. So I'm not I feel like I don't have control over that outcome, which is why I've made a personal decision to just play around with AI and have fun with it while I can, while things are still fun. Yeah, I mean, I know it's a very deep, convoluted answer. I'm still trying to like formulate my thoughts around the topic. But like in a nutshell, I'm having fun while the sun is still shining. But I don't know if the sun will be shining forever.
That's actually very helpful. And like because like you are of similar age as I am, like give or take 5 years, I guess, like take 5 years, because like you seem younger. Um, we grew up using Facebook and YouTube. These two things are still here. They employ algorithms which feed you what you engage with. Would you call that artificial intelligence, like let's say 2.0 or 3.0, and what we have with OpenAI as like let's say AI 5.0 or 6.0?
Yeah, I mean, at some level, yes. I feel like, yeah, I mean, defining AI at this point is almost irrelevant because it's changing so fast, right? Like every few weeks, there's some new stuff that you just can't imagine even exists. Like just looking at where it was just a year ago and where it is now, it's just like, what is this thing? Like, how does it understand so much so quickly? How is it improving at such a rapid pace? So, I mean, you could go all the way back and define initial AI as like, an if statement with something.
Yes.
And like to what it's become today. Like, I don't know. I think, in fact, that's part of the big challenges for regulators, right? Like, how do they define AI? Like, that definition itself is just so blurry, and it's just, I don't know. I mean, it's scary at some level.
Gotcha.
I don't want to sound like a doomer, man, because I'm having fun with it at the moment. Like, I'm loving the fact that these APIs exist. It's making my life objectively better right now. But 10 years into the future, will it be a net positive? I don't know.
Gotcha. And I have a follow-up question on that. Like when we talk about AI, when we talk about the net negatives, or let's say in like some people's minds, like a net positive, uh, where do you think all of this leads to in the near future? Like you mentioned that now the artificial intelligence is the best writer out there, right? So I guess like what my understanding is, it's based on large language models and stuff, LLMs, whatever they like to call it. It's always going to tend towards a mean. So it's going to be the best average writer, and it's going to crank out content pieces. Let's say it's going to crank out 30 content pieces. It's going to write 70 million lines of code in a day, which a normal human cannot. So it might not be the best, but it's going to be the fastest at whatever you want it to do.
I'm not sure I completely agree. Like, for instance, right now, GPT-4 as a writer, I would agree with you. It's not the number one writer. It's somewhere in the middle. However, if you look at other forms of AI, like you look at Midjourney, or you look at some of the other animation stuff that's coming up, some of the photo editing stuff that's coming up, like those are top 1% tools. Like Midjourney is a top 1% illustrator, maybe 0.01% illustrator. So there's no real reason why GPT-4 can't become a top 1% writer into the future. Ultimately, what are we humans? Like, we are just machines that are absorbing information around us, recombining it in different ways, and then spitting it back out, which is not very not very different from what GPT-4 is doing. It just depends on what sort of information we're feeding it, and it always has the benefit of, at least in some forms, having more information than us, right? Like, yes, it might not be able to smell or taste or whatever, but in terms of just pure absorption of text, it will always have more information to be trained on than the average, or even than the best writer. And it's a matter of time before they start combining sources of information, from like visual to smell and to whatever else there may be, taste, etc.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be so sure that it's always going to remain average.
Yeah, that's my bet, but like, yeah, we'll find out soon enough.
We'll find out, man.
Speaking of like the biggest worry that a lot of people have with AI is it's going to take away a lot of jobs. every time automation comes, whether via some machines, farming tools, even the calculators, crying out loud, people lose jobs. That's a fact. Do you think entrepreneurs like you would lose your job to AI?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think like job losses are coming. You can already see it happening in like tech and stuff. They're firing people and basically making excuses that, company's not doing well, but they know at the back of their heads that they don't need so many people if AI can write code and do whatever else. That's natural. I mean, not immoral or anything. It's just, it is what it is. Having said that, I feel like, we could have said the same thing about computers and stuff before that as well, where people did lose jobs and they did find other jobs to do. I think there might be one difference here as compared to the previous revolutions, whether it was industrial or the computer revolution, or even the internet rather, which is that in each of those sort of changes, people went and upskilled themselves and found new jobs that, were coveted, that suddenly became high status. Like let's say, post when computers came out, people learned how to use computers at some point. That became like a high status thing to do, or they went into finance or whatever it might have been. I feel like with AI and the rate at which it's progressing, it's going to be very difficult to train humans to do the kind of jobs that they have been used to doing for the last maybe 30, 40 years. And so we will see like a completely new set of work or jobs, may not even call them jobs, that are impossible for AI to do, that suddenly kind of rise in popularity and status. I don't know what those will be, but it'll be fun to find out. Like, it could be something as simple as like people become, I don't know, man, micro food producers at home, or they become craftsmen that are like working with some, like very physical materials that artificial intelligence will take time to catch up with. I think a lot of it will take us away from our screens, which might be a good thing. That's probably a positive. But I don't know where it will settle. It'll depend on what jobs become cool and untouchable from like AI's standpoint. Like I don't think it will be us moving into like leisurely tasks, the way people expect it. Like everyone will become a painter or a musician. That's not going to happen, because AI can already do all of that much better than us. We could do it as a hobby, but we aren't going to earn money and we're not going to earn status from it. At least the average person is not going to earn status from it, so they won't do it. But it'll be interesting. Fascinating to watch. The fact that we get to see it is a nice experiment.
So now I have a question for you as an economist, right? So when the productivity of everything becomes very high, when you are cranking out 800 million lines of code in an hour or something like that, harnessing 20,000 GPUs at once, the value of the work gets devalued, right? Let's call it work inflation of sorts. Will that have an impact on what money is? Like, will that affect the value of money that we hold today? Like today, we use money as a means to exchange, like, let's say, value between people.
I mean, it won't, I don't think so, because ultimately money is just a means, the way you're defining it at least. Money is a means of exchanging time, right?
Yes.
Like, I buy something in a grocery store because I don't have the time to go and grow it and manufacture it myself. And we all have 24 hours in a day. So money will always be valued, at least largely valued, based on the number of hours in our day, and that's not changing anytime soon. So yes, there could be inflation, this and that, based on faulty monetary policy, which has nothing to do with AI at the moment. But the value of things will still remain in line with the number of hours we have to kind of use that value.
If you think of it like that, when you mentioned that we now work towards our goals, we don't work for our needs. Like you and I don't go to the farm and grow our own foods. We do our own thing and then we pay money to get food or whatnot. But the farmer doesn't. So now, when this our naked need of wants leads to inflations because now we want better stuff, we want faster stuff, and people or AI would create all of those things, racking up the prices of all of these things. So now, if I am willing to pay, let's say, $200 or let's say 5,000 rupees or something like that for a small piece of product that used to be a tenth of the price or a 20th of the price, will that not price out the common man who is not very technical?
So I don't think AI will drive prices up. In fact, I think it will be the opposite. Because machines are so quick to, I mean, they can do things they can do things a lot faster and more efficiently than most people. It will end up driving costs down. The flip side of that also is that the average urban technologically sort of the average urban person who creates technology today will be valued less tomorrow. So they will also be earning less. So I think, in fact, farmers will probably be at an advantage to the average urban resident. Not the top. The top 1% will still, earn a lot more because they'll be. It's like Sam Altman will be a god because he controls. Let's assume that OpenAI ends up being like this winner take all in this space. If at all, I don't know if it'll be a winner take all space in the first place. But if even if there are like 5 players who can afford to build, whatever, all super powerful AI models, those guys will be like the top, the gods for all intents and purposes. Those of us that sit at the top of the chain at the moment, or like sit near the top, like one level below, who are using technology to create other things, will face an identity crisis, because I feel like AI will replace us very, very quickly. And then it'll be up to us to figure out, do we want to just use all of this save time to just not play a status game and just, be happy, which is what I think Sam Altman is telling us to do, which is, just go chill. You've got everything you need. You have some of your wants as well. Don't let your wants go out of control. If we can do that, I doubt we will, but we can try. Yeah, that can be one approach. Or the other approach is, hey, we just all go and become like, do things that AI can't do, like play status games in places where AI can't compete with us. So whether it is become a farmer, whether it is become a plumber, whether it's become an electrician, I don't know, like a live performer for music or a live singer, I don't know. But like, we will find status games to play. It's not that the majority of us will not sit at home and be like, oh wow, AI is giving me everything, I'm just going to look at the wall and play with my friends. That's not going to happen.
Gotcha. Now, let's look a little into the future. Or rather, let's move back from the future to the present. What do you think are the current latest trends in artificial intelligence right now?
I think one that I'm quite excited about right now is, not sure if excited or I'm scared, but like whatever, one of the things that's interesting to me right now is the whole talk to your computer and let it create stuff for you, right? Like, I'm playing with it at the moment with like AudioPen, where it talks and you can talk to it and it creates like a well-structured essay, but that's like the most basic version of it. There are apps now where like you can talk to a computer, tell it to make a website for you. It does that. You can tell it what you want to change. It does that. I saw an app today where you can literally upload a photo and talk to the computer and tell it what to edit. Like, you can tell it remove this object, or like change this object, recolor this part, give it this tone, give it that tone. There was one where like you could talk to a computer and it would just create like an animated scene for you. That stuff is crazy. I think it'll be interesting to see how people use it, because how you talk to a computer, your prompts get more and more complex. So that becomes a more and more maybe valuable skill. But it's a matter of time before, a bunch of people learn how to do it. And then we'll just see like innovation, or whatever you want to call it, like new stuff coming up at just ridiculous paces. Like, it's already happened, right? Like with something as simple as OpenAI is not simple. I mean, that's kind of undervaluing them, but something as easy to use as OpenAI's APIs that have come out in the last year. You go on Product Hunt today or wherever, every day there are like 20 AI products, because it was just impossible to build them earlier. And these guys have just made it so easy to leverage what they've built and build on top of it. I don't know. I don't know if like most of those products will not add value to the 24 hours that we have in life. But it'll, and I think like tech will go the way of the media after the digital. Basically, the media had two of these jumps, right? One went from when people used to write with hand to the printing press, where it suddenly got like a full blown thing, and then it was from printing press to digital media, which basically resulted in like just a load of crap everywhere all the time. Like humans being hit with so much information that they've got to try and figure out what is actually useful and what isn't. And I think we're about to see that happen in the product world, or at least the digital product world. Maybe the product world after 3D printing becomes mainstream, but digital product world for sure right now.
Gotcha. Speaking of the product world, it's a whole can of worms. And I wanted to know that when you built this product, did you have a team or is it a one-man army?
No, it's a one-man army, man. Like I build this stuff at night outside of my day job. But honestly, like AudioPen was just an accident. I was playing around on the API. I built like this mini version of it on my personal website, so not even on its own URL, just like because I wanted to learn the API. Shared it on Twitter, got some good feedback, and people were like, "Oh, this is cool. I could use this for this, this, and this." Then I was like, maybe I should build this. Like, there seems to be some excitement about it. So I built it the following weekend. I host this event called Half Day Build once every like 2 months, where like with a bunch of people, like we all try to go from idea to revenue in 12 hours. So like for this Half Day Build in March, I was like, chalo, I'll just build this tool as its own thing. And yeah, it worked. I managed to go from idea to revenue in 12 hours. And I've just been adding stuff to it ever since, like adding new features, new customers, everything.
Gotcha. Because like a lot of these things that you do now very clearly known as single-handedly, marketing, social media management, product development, product management, collaboration, and integrations. And I saw that you also have an affiliate program, which I guess is also under the realm of like marketing. So all of these different, like, let's say, verticals of a business that you have to manage, and what would be your one piece of advice, or rather multiple pieces of advice, to those who aspire to build something like this?
See, if you're a single founder, you can't really do all of it, right? So you got to over-index on one of those things that kind of impacts the rest in some way. So for me, in like AudioPen's case, for instance, I happened to get lucky. I built a bunch of stuff, and most of which like didn't work very well. With AudioPen, I happened to get lucky that I hit upon a use case in a form factor that people really, really liked. I was very surprised that it was so popular, but it was. Like I was just like, I'm still shocked that people like it that much, but they do. So because of that, I over-indexed on the product. Like, it's not a good idea for everyone. Like in some cases, you might want to over-index on marketing and let that kind of drive everything for you. But for me right now, the only thing I'm doing is listening to people that are using the product, especially those that like it the most. So people that are very vocal about it on Twitter or LinkedIn, etc. Reaching out to them, asking them what they want, what they like, what they don't like, and just trying to keep that initial iteration cycle of, adding new things to the product as tight as possible. In most cases, it's impossible to do because you don't have enough users that like it enough to actually talk about it and give you feedback as well. In this case, I got lucky. So that's all I'm doing. I'm literally just building products, talking to users, replying to anyone who emails me as fast as I can. Yeah, and another thing is just like, because I'm a solo founder, I'm very wary of not suffering from what I call featureitis, which is, you build feature after feature after feature because somebody or the other has asked for it. Because as a product kind of gets more complex, you realize very soon that the number of problems increase exponentially. It's not a linear react, thing, because like the number of problems you have when you have 5 features versus when you have 10 are not double. It is more than double. Because the way these things interrelate with each other, how confused your customers get, the number of support tickets you have to deal with, those more than double. So I'm being very careful about not accepting or not basically incorporating features that everyone requests. And I push back and I say, see, in this case, I'm trying to build a very focused product. I don't want to build everything for everyone. I want to build something specific for someone. I understand that you like it like this and you would love it even more if I built, A, B or C. But I can't because I'm a single. If I had a team that, could handle all of this, maybe I would. But I just can't. So yeah, I mean, those are the two pieces of advice. Like one is over-index on what's working, and two is avoid complexity if you're an independent individual builder.
Gotcha. Speaking of complexities, your tool offers localization of sorts as well. I could speak in Hindi, it would convert that into English. I saw that you also offer Vietnamese and then a bunch of other languages as well. Was it all done via this no-code tool that you use, Bubble, or did you have to go over and above like for that?
No man, purely in Bubble. I don't use anything else at the moment. It's just Bubble and OpenAI that do all the magic.
Gotcha. So
it's ridiculous how easy it is to build software today for almost no money. Like I spend $29 a month on Bubble. And OpenAI is like variable usage. So it depends on how many people are using the tool. I spend accordingly. But like, it's ridiculous how cheap it is to do it and how fast you can do it.
Gotcha. So, speaking of your tech stack, what would you say your tech stack look like, or rather, like looks like?
Like at its core, it's just Bubble and OpenAI. That's the basic stuff that I use. And then, of course, I use like other services for other things. But like the main tool is just built with Bubble and OpenAI.
What other services are you like using, if you don't mind telling us?
Like for instance, for payments at the moment, I'm using a tool called Lemon Squeezy, which I think has the advantage that they collect and remit tax on your behalf. So you don't have to, deal with all of that. As an independent, as an individual builder, it's useful. I don't have an accountant working for me or anything. Then for analytics, I use like very basic, plausible analytics, privacy friendly, doesn't collect too much data, but at this point I'm so in the weeds talking to users that, I can get away with not tracking too much stuff on the website directly. And for like emails and stuff, I use this fairly new tool called Loops, which is like a SaaS email tool, which I would recommend. It's quite nice. I think that's about it at the moment.
Gotcha. And about your revenue model, like you started off at like $39 for lifetime access. Now it's a yearly thing. So how do you come up with this pricing?
So I wanted to just like reward early adopters because like as the product matured, like I started off at $19 a month, not a month, $19 for a lifetime deal on day one. And then on like day 2 or day 3, I switched to $29 for again a lifetime deal. About a couple of weeks in, I switched that from 29 to 39 and then decided to switch to an annual non-recurring subscription when the product turned 1 month old. So at the moment, it's at an annual non-recurring subscription of $39 as well. I could have stretched the lifetime deal and, made more money that way because people are just more comfortable buying lifetime deals than that subscription. Yeah. But I didn't want to live with that stress of, someone coming to me 5 years later being like, bro, where's the product? Or 10 years later saying, where's the product? During the lifetime deal, I very clearly mentioned that the product is available. You'll have access for as long as the product is alive, not as long as you are alive. Like if you live for 100 years, a product is not expected to live for 100 years.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like I didn't want to stretch the one-time deal too much because it just felt like, sometimes you don't want to be too greedy. You want to move to a sustainable model. Every year, I thought a non-recurring model was also interesting because like I'm tired of subscriptions. Like I have too many subscriptions and I don't use, but they just keep charging my card every month or every year. Just like, what is this? I have to email them saying, please, I forgot to cancel. If you can refund, please refund. So I didn't want to do that. And also had the added advantage of just being simpler to do a non-recurring model, to implement it technically. So I did that. Like at the moment, you could pay $39. You get access for 1 year. At the end of that year, you lose access, but like all of the stuff you've created is still yours to see. You can then choose to renew or choose to just export whatever you created and go somewhere else. You don't have to continue using the tool at the end of the year if you don't want to. You can renew it at the same price. So if you lock it in at 39 now, which I'm going to increase on I think the 1st of May, to either like 49 or 59. I don't know yet. But yeah, whatever price you buy it at in year 1, you can renew it for that price in year 2 and so forth.
Gotcha.
Let's see how it goes. It's still like day 2 of that pricing model. So I don't know, how good or bad a decision that was.
Gotcha. So like now you are also playing the role of the salesperson, like you are pricing inventory. What goes in your head when you first decided, okay, this thing that I built is like $19 for lifetime access, and what made you switch that to 29 and now 39?
Mostly just feedback from customers. Like it was initially, I was quite confused that people liked it as much as they did. So I priced it at 19. If I were to give the product a true value right now, I think it would be worth. I think it would be, for its core users at this point, it would be worth north of $100 a year. For its most power users, like it saves people. The kind of feedback I've gotten has surprised me. I don't think I am also its core user. I personally would pay maybe $60-$70 for it, given the kind of usage I have personally. But like I have seen some people that are saving hours of their life using the product. Like lawyers are using it, writers are using it, journalists are using it, academics are using it. And like I know that these people value it like way more than $100 a year. And they would be willing to pay that much for it as well. Obviously, I can't be ridiculous and say, hey, pay me $1,000 a year, because then they just go and build it themselves. Someone else will go and build it for them, which would be dumb. But I think eventually I want to settle on a price that's somewhere in the range of $100-ish. And I'm increasing the price gradually as I improve the product, as I add more stuff to it, as I hear more stuff from users to figure out exactly who my users are, what they want, create that product that, they would be willing to pay more for, even the average user, not necessarily only the power users. But yeah, I mean, initially it was just a random number, like 19 felt decent. And now it's just inching upwards because like I'm seeing that this
Demand
is clearly
keeps going
valuable
up.
to a lot of people. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Not just demand, even like testimonials. Like people are just writing back stuff to me, writing on Twitter, sharing it without me telling them, and writing such like high praise, which like I feel sometimes like, what the hell, this is madness. Like I don't deserve this, but like thank you. So I like it's definitely hit some sort of need that I'm not sure I fully grasped when I started building it.
Okay, so as a user, I'll try to explain why and I guess like some other people like it as well. You've seen those old movies where the scientists used to have a like recorder device which would record everything that they said. What would happen afterwards when you are a journalist and you take a sound bite from, let's say, a politician about his latest scam? What happens then? There has to be a transcriptionist who has to listen to it and then translate that, or rather, like transcribe it. The problem there is that even with automated tools that do it, and I've tried a bunch for the podcast that I do, the problem is that they don't get the technical words right. And because like your tool had that 3-minute thing, and it got my voice perfectly despite my heavily accented Indian English. And I tried it with a bunch of other people. Like the transcription was flawless. Even if I don't use the AI tool, because you have like that read original transcript, it serves the purpose. And like $20 for lifetime access, I got it at 29. It was a no-brainer. And I was like, yeah, I want this. I want to feel like a scientist. I want to make sure that whatever my musings are, if I want to read that again, I get it. I don't have to like write my notes if I want to get started with anything. Just get started, click a button, it works. And I guess
Yeah, yeah.
that resonates with people.
Yeah, yeah, I think I've been too in the weeds in the last month since it's been built to actually use it for, like, right now, 90% of my notes are just like me talking to AudioPen about AudioPen. You're like, okay, I have to build this today. This user said this, that user said that. I think this, I think that. I haven't really had time to sit back and, use it as a normal user would.
Yeah.
Maybe in a few weeks, things will like calm down a little where I can do that and figure it
Gotcha.
out.
Gotcha. So with that, this podcast episode comes to a close. If you have anything to say to the HackerNoon readers, like what would be your one message?
Just keep building interesting stuff, man. Find things to do that you genuinely like and just keep swinging. Like eventually you'll hit something. Like no matter how big or small, like as long as you enjoy what you're doing, it doesn't matter. Just keep at it.
Gotcha. So with that, thank you, Louis, for being on the HackerNoon podcast. This has been wonderfully illuminating, given that you had to do all of these things on your own. We are really proud to have you with us, and hopefully you will be back once again.
HackerNoon podcast.